What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I am your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest is somebody that I can't even believe that I'm saying that they are on this show. Now, to be fair, I did want this individual on this show at some point, but I didn't think at the start of year 2 I could get them here. But hey, time and circumstances, everything, especially when I've learned that, especially doing the podcast game, man. It's all about timing. All of this is about timing. And I was at the right place at the right time, and no pun intended, but I was. And, the fact that I am able to say that today's guest is the great Kristi Lee blows my mind, because as a lifelong Bob and Tom show listener, or somebody that's at least I've known about Bob and Tom, I would say probably about 80% of my existence, because they've been so prominent in my area in Ohio where I live. The fact of the matter is, it's a great honor for me to say that she is now a part of my show roster, and I could not have. I'm going to be completely honest with y'all. I was fanboying the entire time. I was. I'm not even afraid to hide it. You can hear it in my voice as I'm talking about it right now. You can hear it in the intro once the episode actually starts, when we get into the interview. Like, I fanboyed the whole time. I've done a very good job, I think, at controlling my fanboyness. And if that is a word, fanboyness, I know it's not, but it is now because I used it. But I've done a real good job at containing that. But when it came to Kristi, I just couldn't. And I don't know why. But, I do know why, because I'm such a huge fan of the Bob and Tom show. And it's meant so much to me as it has millions of other people. But anyway, I really think you guys are going to enjoy this one. And wherever you are watching or listening to this on, please like and subscribe, because that helps me out more than you know. Absolutely. Every time you hit like, every time you subscribe to a platform, every time you share, even commenting on social media, that helps me out a million more times than what I think a lot of people think. So definitely, please do that. Help your boy out. I would appreciate it, so I can keep getting great guests like today's guest, Kristi Lee, which, by the way, let's go ahead and hear a word from my sponsors and then into the interview. Let's do it, y'all. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jay, and I'm here for W Energy, my sponsors. Now, what is W Energy, you might ask? W Energy is clean, jitterless energy. Better than the canned stuff that you would get at your convenience stores, your gas stations, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have all that trash in it. Now, how do I know? Because I myself use W Energy. So what I've got here, a couple of limited edition flavors. For instance, W Energy puts out this stuff called Grandpa's Ginger Water. I know it don't sound that great, but it is amazing. Limited run that they came out that I've got actually multiple tubs of. I believe in W Energy. I use W Energy myself. Also, this was just released, and it's another limited edition flavor that they come out with, and it's called Pom Blom. It's pomegranate blossom. Real nice, clean flavor. And a lot of W Energy, whether it be classics like Calio Cream or the Dub Sludge, whatever it might be, it is clean energy. It's not going to make you feel all crappy at the end of the day after using it. Now, here's what I want you to do, because again, they're obviously a sponsor of mine. But what I want you to do is I want you to go to www.w.gg, order one of the sampler packs, which you get one of these cool tumblers, a part of the sampler pack. And I want you to grab one, but don't use my promo code. That's right. Don't use my promo code, who else, at checkout, because I want you to try it without thinking I'm just trying to sell you a bill of goods. Try it one time, and then when you go back to buy your second order of W Energy, then use my promo code, who else, at checkout for a 10% discount, because all you're going to do is try it. I know you're going to love it. That's how much I believe in this product, and I thank them for sponsoring the show today. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay, who else but me, and today we're going to do a little bit different on the intro, because this is something that I feel beyond honored and privileged to be doing right now, and that is speaking to somebody who is a trailblazer in a field that once upon a time was, I'd be willing to bet, probably 95% male. And not only did she break that door down, but she became a trailblazer to open up the door for other people who wanted to be in this field, who were not male, who were women, and were looked down on at a time where if you tried to do something that men could do, it wasn't looked at as positively as it is today. And not only did she break that door down, but she broke it down to where nobody could ever build it up again. And not only that, she did it in a room full of dudes where testosterone was flowing out of control through years and years and years. And I've got so much respect for she's on the Bob and Tom Show, which is a nationally syndicated radio show. If you aren't familiar with it, which you must be living under a rock to not be familiar with it, but this show has meant so much to me in my entire adult life that just having the opportunity to speak to her now it flutters me to the point you can hear it in my voice. I'm so flustered right now because they've played such a huge role in my life through times where I just needed nothing more than a laugh, and they provided it to me, and it has meant the absolute world to me. It is the one, the only, the legend, Kristi Lee. How are we doing today, Kristi?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever had quite an introduction. My goodness gracious, thank you. I'm not so sure I deserve all of that, but I appreciate it. That's for sure. I'm great. The sun is shining. My dogs will probably be barking. We've had some technical problems, but I think we're all sorted out now, and we're ready to go on this gorgeous afternoon. What do you want to talk about?
Well, first and foremost, I had I want to start this off again differently. With the entire conversation we're having now. Normally, I save this kind of thing for the end, and as of this recording yesterday, I was talking to your colleague Pat Godwin, and I wanted to say the same to you that I said to him. You guys, like I said in the intro, you guys helped me through some very dark periods in my life where I just needed a laugh, specifically during the COVID era. Back in 2020, which both seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago. Back in 2020, there were times where, because I live in Ohio, and
Hmm.
Ohio was kind of like the center for how things were going throughout the rest of the country, led by Mike DeWine and his policies. And I was constantly getting a barrage of negative news in my face and my ears, anywhere I looked. I mean, granted, it's not just me, and it's specifically to Ohio. The whole country was going through that. But being the epicenter for kind of like the standard of how things were going living in Ohio, there were times where I literally didn't smile or laugh all day long, and I didn't have access to a radio at my job. This was long before Wi-Fi is what it is now, where things were amplified to where you can listen to things wherever you are. Access wasn't so normal, so there'd be days where it would just be me in silence, and I wouldn't laugh at all until I would sit down at 8 o'clock at night, and there was a segment that you guys would release. It's not released anymore, but there was a segment at the time you guys were released called Bob and Tom Tonight. And it was a 20-minute segment where it would be highlights of the day's show. Now, I would only be able to listen to about a half hour of every morning because I would be at work at that point in time. So I'd miss a lot of it. The only time throughout that time that I would smile throughout the work week would be listening to the 20-minute segment. And I remember those segments were a big part of during that time of my life to kind of reset my brain. And I don't know if my mental health would have made it through had I not had those segments. Because again, the only time I'd smile or laugh would be those 20-minute segments in hearing your guys' show. So the fact that you guys were able, look, you guys could have said, hey, this is a radio show. We don't know how to deal with this pandemic thing. We're just gonna take a break until we can figure out. You didn't do that. You kept going. You kept going so people had something that they could enjoy during such dark times. So for that, I have to stop and say thank you very much for what you guys did for not only me, but the fan base as well by continuing to persevere through that because it couldn't have been easy for you. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
First of all, thank you. I'm glad that we could provide that for you. Secondly, for us, especially for me, I feel guilty almost because my life really did not change in 2020. I mean, during the
Mm,
pandemic, I still went to work every day and I still had that camaraderie every day and I came home from work every day. I mean, honestly, the only thing that was different was the girls came back. Both of my kids came home, from one from college and one from Chicago. And so I had that. But other than that, I was one of the fortunate ones because I wasn't in a horrible, high pressured situation like a hospital, type of deal. I was still in my comfort zone, in my happy place, and I think that what we did for you, the five or six of us did for each other. So I think that really helped too. We have, I mean, I have the equipment stored up there that we could have all done our show from the house, where we could all stayed in the home, done the show, and done it like a lot of other radio stations did. But Tom was so gracious, and our studio, blessed, is so big that we were allowed to, be 6 feet away from each other. Yes, I was put away in my own little room, but I got to tell you, that wasn't so bad. I know Pat complains that it's a little cold in there, but you don't have to hear some of the stuff I hear during the breaks. Oh my gosh.
Right.
So it was kind of nice having that little space. But yeah, that was a weird time, and I'm glad that Tom decided to do that the way he did, because it was better for everybody's mental health, and I'm glad that we were able to help you through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the year after that, my sister and I don't. If you're listening to this, I'm not going to continue to get depressed. I just have to get this out because this is my only opportunity to do this. But my sister and her husband the following year ended up getting really sick from COVID.
Oh.
Her husband didn't make it, and she almost didn't make it multiple times. And I would have to drive from Piqua, Ohio, all the way down to Lexington, Kentucky, because it was the only place that would take her down in UK. I would have to drive there every single weekend and experience some pretty horrific things going through those hospitals. But again, the things that I had to take my mind off things on those long 3.5 hour drives, I would put on Best of Bob and Tom, or I would listen to the Bits and Pieces podcast, or I would put on Bob and Tom 24/7. Like literally throughout my entire life, not only COVID, throughout my entire life, if I ever needed to laugh, I put you guys on. So when we have experiences like, for those who don't know, the reason why me and Kristi are talking today is because a couple weeks ago I had won the pigskin picks, and
Right.
it was so natural for me to get on that program and talk to you guys the way that I did, because I feel like I know you guys, because I listen to you guys. Like I listen to you guys more than I listen to my wife. And I know how badly that's going to get me in trouble, but it is what it is. But like, I feel like I know you guys. So when I was on that feature, it was so easy for me to just kind of like fit into the fold and take shots at Tom or fire back at Chick or have those conversations. Cause like, you guys are almost family to me, even though you guys are complete strangers. So, yeah, your guys' show has definitely meant a lot to me for sure.
Well, and that's the best compliment we could ever get, is that you think of us as family, because that's what we want to be to you. I mean, that's why I agreed to do this, because now you're my brother that I didn't know I had.
The downside of that is that nobody would ever believe that in real life because I'm 6'3" and you were totally not. So there's
No, I'm
that as
not.
well. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's okay. Weirder things have happened. We have different dads. Let's leave it that.
There you go. There you go. There you go. The only time I ever got to meet you guys was you did a live show in 2023 in Dayton, Ohio at I think it
Hmm.
was called The Tank. And I was there front row the entire time. I didn't leave. I ended up winning tickets through TUE. That's how I was there.
Hmm.
And I got the VIP package as well. So I was able to take pictures with you guys and everything. And I'll show that here as the podcast goes. But the funny thing about it was my really only interaction I ever had with you was, you know, those things where you reach out your hand to shake somebody's hand and they don't notice until it's too late, but you already put your hand down. Yeah,
Yeah.
you totally did that to me, where you extended your hand and I didn't see it until it was too late and your hand dropped and I looked down and by then it was too late because I had to take the picture. There was an entire line waiting behind me, like I couldn't redo it. So
All good.
what ended up happening is I actually, again, 6'3", I actually came down to you where I was like, "Here, Kristi, I'll come down," and I did this thing where I was sitting here and my arm is kind of like, I didn't know what to do with my arm, so my arm is extended out over my hand. And Alsman goes, "Oh, that's so sweet." And then she looks at my hand. She goes, "I don't know what you're doing with your hand, and I don't think I want to know what you're doing with it either." So I was like, "Oh shit!" So it got even more awkward. But it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And I wondered, is there any real difference than the obvious? You guys aren't in studio when you guys are doing these live shows, but is there any real difference between doing a live show from a random location like that as opposed to doing it in studio, other than the obvious? You guys are out of your comfort zone. Do you prefer doing stuff like that? Is it a breath, or how do you view doing those kind of live show situations?
Well, it depends. It really takes Tom out of his comfort zone. And so when that
Mm,
happens, that is, as you can imagine, a domino effect. Because when Tom isn't comfortable, he makes everybody else uncomfortable.
Sure.
So there's that factor. Sometimes other people on our show get a little, um, I don't know, weird when they're in front of a live audience. I'm not going to mention any names, which also takes that dynamic away, that makes it not as comfortable and as easygoing as it could be. I don't mind. I love live audiences. I did live sports for years. That's why I love doing it. I love live. I love doing, hosting the stand-up shows. I love meeting people. I don't. I have no trouble with it at all. In fact, if you notice, when we do a live show, I barely get to do anything because there's so much else going around. I'm always been filler. I mean, they don't really even know that I'm there half the time, which is fine. I don't care. But during a live show, if you notice how the flow of the show goes, Tom only comes to me when he needs to fill something, like a song isn't ready or the next guest isn't ready, or I know that's my role. I've got something. I'm always prepared, but it's kind of easy for me. Live shows are easier for me than a regular day. I like them. I like them. Not everybody
Yeah.
will say that though. And if they did say they liked them, they're lying to you. I'm telling you right now. And I'm not gonna mention any names, but I think you understand who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I had an interaction with him where he looked at me, turned around, and walked away. If I had to
That
guess,
would be
but
the one, probably.
yep.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Hey, it is
But
what it is.
that's who he is. That's cool. Whatever. Yeah, everybody's
Yeah.
different.
So I always kind of wanted to ask you, why did you decide to go into radio? Because again, like I said in the intro, and if you weren't alive back then, you really don't know what I mean, but radio, or at least in my area, radio was dominated by men. And if there was a woman on the radio, it almost felt kind of out of place. And they were, like you said, kind of like in the background and they weren't prominent. You, however, and I know you said you felt like you're a background character, but for us with fan base, by no means do we view you as a background character. You're just as
Really?
prominent as the rest.
Huh.
What was your decision to go into radio in such a time like that?
Well, yeah, I'm really old. So way back when, I am. I admit it. I don't care. Here, everybody goes, "Oh my gosh, don't you work?" No, are you kidding me? I'm lucky to be this old, and I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to get Botox. I don't care. I'm Pamela Anderson in radio. I don't care. I am who I am. And if you don't like it, don't like it. No, I started in radio in high school. I took a class in high school in my junior year as a filler because somebody had said, "Oh, this is an easy class. You should take it." And believe it or not, I was a pretty strong student, so I had all these really serious classes. And so I took this radio class, and my teacher at the time said, "Hey, you've got some talent in this department." And I'm like, "What?" Nobody had ever said that to me before. And so I was like, "Okay, let's, explore that." And our radio teacher back in the day was still working in commercial radio. So he got a lot of his students jobs. So he got me a job at a small town radio station. When you say I broke barriers, um, it wasn't in radio that I felt like I broke a barrier because I never thought of radio as a career back then. I just thought it was
Sure.
fun and, this is going to be something fun. But back in the olden days when I was growing up, there was this thing called EOC, Equal Opportunity, or EOE, or some Equal Opportunity Employer, EOE. And when I was in high school, I went ahead and got my first class radio license, which at the time I had no idea why. But my radio teacher once again said, "You need to do this." And I go, "What for?" And he goes, "Trust me, it'll pay off for you." And so I spent a summer at my former high school radio teacher's kitchen table with his wife and his two little boys. And I studied and studied, and I got my first class license, which is almost like a basic engineering degree. You had to learn capacitors and resistors and a lot of stuff I will never ever use. But I got a phone call, and it was from a TV station. And they said, "We need an engineer and we need to hire a woman because of EOE." All right.
Mhm.
This is where I broke a barrier because I walked into that television station. I'd never been in one, A. And B, um, I was an engineer. I hired me as a TV engineer. I was the first one there, first female. And I started at the very bottom. And within 6 years, I was their technical director, which was a big deal back then. And I'm very proud of that because that was something that a lot of women weren't doing. I guarantee you, in the country, I was probably one of a handful, maybe. Um,
Sure.
and so that's where I really think I broke a ceiling or broke a barrier. And if it hadn't been for a law, I'm going to be honest, if it hadn't been for a law, do I think I would have gotten that opportunity? Probably not. But I got that opportunity. And this is what I tell young people when I talk to them, no matter what it is. I didn't want to be a television engineer, but I recognized it as an opportunity to learn something. And I always thought maybe I'd go on camera someday. I wanted to be a sports, I loved sports. I thought maybe I'll do sports reporting. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, if I'm in a TV station, I have a better shot of getting a job on air than if I'm not in the TV station. And so that's kind of why I took the job in the back of my head. But also, it was like you can never learn enough and you never know where that's going to pay off down the road. And it's paid off for me. It paid off in people that I met, it paid off in situations I was put in. Now, I didn't get to go on air at the time, but that's because it was a union shop, and I won't get into all those rules and regulations. But it did. It was a really great learning experience. So when kids come to me and say, "Oh, I want to do this. I want to, work in radio and I want to, start in Cleveland." And I'm like, "Well, you're not going to start in Cleveland probably. And this is what you have to do. Maybe you're going to have to take a job in Piqua, no offense, but a smaller market. I started in Lebanon, Indiana, a smaller
Yeah.
market, or you're going to have to take a job during copywriting in a TV station that you didn't really want to do, or these are just examples. But all of those things pay off down the road some way. And that kind of paid off for me because if it hadn't been for that job, I wouldn't have landed other jobs. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest barrier.
All right, we got to take a break in the action and let you know about my brand new Patreon account. It is www.patreon.com/The Row Show Pod. Now, what I want you to do is go there and join absolutely free. You're going to get show announcements before anyone else. You're going to get bonus episodes not posted anywhere else except this account. You're going to get info on upcoming events and dates that I'm not posting anywhere. And it is all, again, absolutely free. So what are you waiting on? Go join now, support the show, and don't forget, no matter where you're watching this on, to like and subscribe.
Now, when you say there weren't a lot of women in my field in radio or television, you're absolutely right. And I think it to this day, I feel more comfortable around men 100%, just because I never did work with women. Really, I've never, Jess and Jesse at the station now, or Jessica Alsman and Jess Hooker, that's two more women than I've ever had to work with on the air. I mean, they never worked. We just never had them. So it's kind of cool. But I've always been around men. I've always had to deal with guys. I know there are feminists out there that are going to think that, oh, well, but I just dealt with it. If they were saying something I didn't want to hear, I'd walk out of the room. Or they're pretty respectful most times. I never had a situation. I've only had one situation in all of my broadcast career where it was a bad situation, where
Yeah.
if you do this, you can have this. And I said, that won't be happening. I will find work elsewhere. So that was one time. And back in a day when it happened a lot to a lot of women. So I'm very fortunate, or very ugly. One of the two. I can't figure out which.
You're crazy, number one. But yeah, it's just a different time. And I
Yeah.
just, it's hard to, this is the problem that I have with like what you said. And by the way, I don't get political here. So if you're listening to this and you think we're about to, we're not. But this is
No.
the problem that I have when people look back in those kind of times. Like even if you go back and listen to old Bob and Tom albums, you can't play some of that stuff on air now for obvious reasons. It was a different time. So when
Right.
you go back and you listen to some of these skits and you listen to some of these older albums that you guys did, yeah, for today's standard, it's going to sound a little raunchy because back then anything was on the table. So, we look at it with the opposite of what rose colored glasses would be. We look at some of these things, that some of the content that Bob and Tom put out during that time frame differently because it was just a different time. So yeah, like you said, feminists might look at it weird, but it's not, it's how it was back then. You had shock rock like Howard Stern,
Right.
where the goal was to piss off as many people as possible. it just changed because everyone wanted to piss off as many people as possible. Then nobody got pissed anymore. And now, the cycle's kind of reset. So yeah. And I do go back and listen to some of those older skits where I'm kind of like, oh God, but hey,
Well,
different time.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's all different time, but everything change. Nothing's consistent but change, as my granny used to always say, and that's true. And it'll come all back around again. It's already turning, if you've noticed. I think people,
Yeah.
political correctness has gone so far that people are like, okay, I can't take this anymore. I just can't take it. I mean, let's be, of course, sensitive to people and subjects, but there's a point where it's like, come
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you have comedians like Shane Gillis, which I actually had a conversation with Reno about this. Reno Collier. For those who don't know, you can go back in my archives and check out that episode. But we actually talked about that where we're talking about Shane Gillis and do you think offensive comedy is coming back? And he said, absolutely. Why? Because as a comedian, your job is to get a reaction from people. I think a lot of these comedians who toe the political correctness line, I think it holds them back because you get a laugh by the shock. We have gone as far as we can go with the political correctness thing. And do you see that a lot coming in with a lot of these people, these comedians that are coming in where you feel that kind of change? Or is it kind of, how does that feel to you being somebody who has as much exposure around them as you do?
Well, I don't think, I mean, they're not going to do that on our show, A, because they're intimidated by Tom, and B, I think the biggest change that we have seen with comedians, and this is one of Tom's biggest pet peeves, is podcasting. Because guys forget that they're on the air and not on a podcast. We can talk as long as we want. We can talk about whatever we want. We can say pretty much whatever we want. You can't do that on broadcast network. You can't do that. We have
Right.
6 minutes. You've got, we need to set you up for a bit. You need to do your bit and get out. We can't sit here and talk about da 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 for 10 minutes and then you do a bit. That is what really has changed about, I think, some of our guests, the newer guests, not the guests that have been there for a long time who know how the show runs. Tom's
Right.
old. Tom's not, he's old school. He's, a bit guy. He wants, boom, 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 boom. He doesn't want to hear about, hey, I went to Reno last week and, it's a little big town. Blah, blah. He doesn't care. Give me a bit, make me laugh. So, yes, when you said you have to get in, get out, get that punch in, I don't think it's necessarily an offensive thing. I think that the comedians know not to be too bad, but I think they do, especially the younger ones, need to understand you need to get in and get in there quick and get out. Don't, what is, it's kind of one of those things that's opposite of podcasting. It's almost, you know when to shut up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because Chick did it to me. When I was trying to explain why I spell my name Jey, I realized, oh shit, I was going too long. And luckily Chick saved me. I know a lot of people actually were like, wow, he was being kind of a dick. I was like, nah, I was going too long. And he interfered to, get me to stop because I'm just talking about how I spell my name and it's gone for 30 seconds. Like this is a radio show. I needed to say, oh, I just wanted to be different. Not an
Yeah,
actual explanation to why I spell my name that way. So yeah, I absolutely took it the correct way for sure. So
it's
one of the
cool.
things that one of the things that I wanted to admit to you now that I'm in this setting where I can do that. Obviously, I became an avid listener around 2007 because that's when I joined the workforce and that's when I was up early enough. But being in this area in Ohio, this was kind of like the hub along with Indiana and Kentucky and Michigan. We got the most Bob and Tom content than anywhere else. Obviously, you go to the West Coast, it gets a little bit less. Pat said the East Coast, it wasn't really that prominent, but in the Midwest, it was everywhere,
Right.
especially in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like people at my high school were singing Beer Rug. Like, and we didn't even listen to the radio. We were at school while that was on. So those albums were circulating everywhere. Though I say all that to say this, you were actually my first radio crush. Because when I heard your voice, even though, and again, this is going to sound weird, I didn't know what either Bob or Tom or you or Chick, I had no idea what any of you guys looked like until like 2005 because we still had dial-up internet back then. So it wasn't easily, and I didn't obviously go to any live events that you guys were had. I was way too young. But the first time I ever heard your voice, I was like, "Ooh." I'm just admitting that right now. I always wanted to say that, but I bring that up to ask this: did you always have a voice for radio, or even you said obviously that wasn't your angle, but did you always have that voice, or did you have to develop that? Because like somebody like me, this has always been my speaking voice. This isn't something that I developed. Now I probably should enunciate better, but is that something that came naturally for you, or is that something that you worked on?
Oh my God, no! It came naturally. I've never done anything. I am the worst. I have fallen into this, and I've been so blessed and so grateful. No, like I said, I got an early start in high school, and I've worked ever since like Chick. I've worked commercially since I was 15. And so that's a long, long time. And I just, no, I never, and nobody ever said to me when I was growing up, you have a voice for radio. I mean, nobody ever said that to me. Nobody ever, I honestly, Jay, I wish I had an answer. It's just, as my mother said, may she rest in peace, you were born for this job because you haven't stopped talking
Yes.
since the day you were born. Well, gee, thanks, Mom. Yeah, which is probably true. I mean, I do talk a lot. That's true. You wouldn't know that on the show because I'm interrupted all the time and they never listen to
Right.
the
Yeah.
show. I do have things to say, which is why I started my own podcast years ago, Kristi Lee Uninterrupted, because nobody could interrupt me. It was finally my show, which I quit
Yeah.
doing. But that's another story. But I have another podcast called Worth Your Time if you'd like to check it out. Um, it's with Dr. Rob Shoemaker, who's the president and CEO of the Indianapolis Zoo, and we don't just talk about animals, but we do talk about animals sometimes. And this is a shameless plug, but we also talk to other crazy people all over. Anybody who's worth your time, or we feels worth your time, we're going to expose you to. So it's kind of like what you're doing. It's just chatting with folks. So yeah, we just started it. It's kind of we're just getting our feet wet, so to speak. But yeah,
Yeah, I've listened to a couple episodes too, and it's for anybody that's interested in checking it out. Like, you definitely get to see a different side of you because, again, nobody's like cutting into what you're trying to say all the time. So, yeah, it is a very good product.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of good at this. Nobody would know, but I try. I've tried. I'm prepared. I sit there. It's so cute at my little desk. I sit there with my little papers. I've read everything. I've got them all in like an order and like a flow and a nice. I used to be a real journalist, but now I'm a puppet. I smile and I read what I'm told to read. No, it's fine. I love it. It's not that bad. But there was a time when, I got to, for those of you who listen to like an NPR, I did get to do stories and I did have sound bites and I was really a newscaster. That obviously has evolved as the show's evolved too. And I get that. I mean, we don't need hard news. If you want hard news, you're going to go somewhere else. So I love that I don't have to do hard news. It's what keeps me sane. Because if I had to
Sure.
do hard news, I would, oh my gosh, there's enough sadness in the world. I don't need to harp on that every day. Kudos to the people that do that, the news anchors and ladies and gentlemen that have to know. No, thanks. I'm happy doing stupid little silly jokes. Yes. I don't do the jokes. I do the straight lines to set up the jokes. That's what I do.
Well, something else that you were always, I thought, very, very good at, and it's something that we don't really get a lot anymore on the show, back say probably up until about I don't know, maybe 5 6 years ago, the show was very skit oriented, and that was one of my favorite things about the show. Now we don't get a whole lot of that anymore. It was that something that just is that a natural progression of where you guys have gone with the show, or was that kind of like more of a directive, like, hey, let's make this more of just like a strict talk show and a little bit less on the jokes? Is it because some of the old staff members aren't there anymore? Obviously, we have the tragedy with Ron Sexton. That's a big hole in it. But even still, like even before all that, it seemed like it got less and less. Is that just a natural progression, or was that more of a directive?
It's funny you would say that. I said the exact same thing to someone today. I go, why? Don't you remember we used to do bits on this show? What happened? Honestly, I mean, I think I think it's just the way that Tom wants the show to run. It's
Mm.
Tom's show now. Bob is, of course, retired. Tom has complete control. Tom likes having complete control. And I think that that's just become a natural progression of his personality. So, I mean, I know for a fact there are guys in that room who've written bits and skits and wanted to do them, and they've been tabled for one reason or another, especially last year or 2 years ago. But to be honest, I don't know why they're not being done now. I can't answer that. Um, it's baffling to me. Love it or leave it, Shirtless Girl to me is one of the best bits ever produced in the world. It's probably one of the best produced comic bits. Let Saturday Night Live do something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so good. And we have not produced a Shirtless Girl in how long? We can do it. We've done it. I'm not on that particular part of the staff. I don't really I'm not years and years and years ago, and even I know you're getting to this because I did do some skits or whatever, and I've done some stuff. I just did a grandma got run over by a reindeer bit. I don't know what happened to it. I mean, I sang it. I don't know what happened. I know Kristi sings show dies, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, we had a chance to redo it, so somebody listened to it. But the the fact that Tom sat me down years ago and said, we need one person to be the voice of reason, if you will. They didn't want me doing stupid jokes and stupid skits and then coming back and handling the World Trade Center, for example. When we have a
Mm,
situation like that, there has to be someone that people can sort of respect or listen to, and hopefully, I guess that was he picked me, and hopefully I'm fulfilling that role. I hope so. That's kind of why you don't see me doing silly skits anymore, or as not very much.
yeah.
I sang with Duke the other day, but that was funny. But I think Tom really does want somebody that is just a little bit more respectable. I don't know if that's the word. I've certainly.
No, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. But even when it comes to like Chick, obviously Mr. Obvious is something that he's probably sick and tired of doing. But
But they're great,
the fan base loves him. And
right?
that's something that I think is just really and again, I've got so much love for the show, so I'm not trying to critique, but I miss so much of that. And what's nice about the 24/7 app and listening on that as opposed to a radio station is in between breaks, like you get to hear some of those old skits, and there's times where like even something as simple as a call in. I know we
Yeah,
tried a couple times earlier this year. I think it was earlier this year where Ernie Fergler would call in every once in a while. And it's like I miss that. That's what breaks up the monotony of news story after news story after sports story. And
you're
yeah, I could
preaching
tell
to
by
the
the look on your
choir.
face I'm preaching. I was gonna say I could tell by the look on your face I'm preaching to the choir.
You are, and this is a topic you need to bring up with Tom because he's the one that controls it. Certainly not the rest of us because we all feel the
Yeah.
same exact way. So, I mean, that's kind of the way it is right now. I don't know. I know that with Jason taking over Dean's role, Jason's trying to get Tom to do more bits and he's brings it up a lot. I hear it. I hear it in meetings, but I don't know. Who knows? Who knows, Jay?
You tell that son of a bitch two things. You tell him number one, I'm holding him to the fact that he said on air he would do this show, and I have not been able to get a hold of him yet, but I'm looking for him. So you tell him that.
Griswold?
Number two, Tom,
All right.
you tell him that. I will find him.
Okay.
He will be on here one way or the other. And then number two, let him know that as a representative of the fan base, a longtime listener, we want that. There's a place for all of that. So I think that, and again, you're absolutely right. And you can tell that it was more of a Bob directive than a Tom, because as soon as Bob left, like I could tell immediately that started to dwindle down
Yeah.
immediately. And it sucks because and again, it's not that it doesn't the show is lacking now. That's not what I mean. It
It's just
added
different.
so much more to it.
I know. I agree. I agree. Yeah, it's just a different. It's just different. And I will take your concerns to management, sir.
Well, again, you just let him know. It's the same way that I saw y'all in Dayton, and the same way I won that pigskin picks. If I got to, I will win another one just to get back on air and give him shit
All
until
right.
he fulfills his promise to give the people what they want and get on this show and
Uh,
face me man to man. But anyway, I
Now, would
digress.
you ask him that if you had him on?
I absolutely would.
Okay, cool. Fair enough. All
I'm
right.
100% fearless when I do stuff like this, and it's not out of a place of arrogance. Like, I absolutely in this environment will look him dead in the eyes and go, "What you doing, bro? Come on.
Okay, cool.
Come on."
Fair enough. I'd like to hear the answer to that.
Cool.
I would.
Well, we might have to talk about this when this ends. But anyway, let's get back to you. So back to the skits, because again, that is something that is one of my favorite parts of the show and always has been. But is there anything else that you have produced in your time doing these skits that really stick out to you as some of your other favorites?
What obviously the old lady bingo thing, that he always plays. Um, Bits that so it's so sad that A, I'm old and my memory's gone, and B, it's been so long since I've heard bits, that I can't really, I always enjoyed all of Ron's work. I enjoyed, Mr. Obvious. I loved a lot of the Speedway stuff. A lot of our race albums were always good. I love those songs. We haven't produced a new race song in 15 years, 20 years. That would be fun. I don't think Tom even knows who Pato Award is. That's not true because he's one of his neighbors. But um, yeah, yeah, boy. And you brought up Ernie Fergler. Ernie had to retire, and so we don't have Ernie anymore. I know it's politically incorrect again. Love the Love Brothers. I still do some stuff with them on in very rare occasions, but usually a live show with them once or twice a year. And they still write and are funny, and but it's not for radio anymore.
Right.
We do it in a private, setting for corporate, but it's still fun and funny to me. Um, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When How did you get on Bob and Tom in general? Let me just ask it that way. How did you end up getting on Bob and Tom? Because I don't think that question's ever been answered. It might have been answered elsewhere. I don't think it's been answered for me. How did you get into being on the show to begin with?
Well, like I said earlier, I was working at a TV station in town. And so I'd work Monday through Friday. And, most television stations back in the day, your local news was at 5 and 10 or 6 and 11, whatever, not from 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. like it is now. God, that would drive me nuts if I had to do that. But, and then, so I'd have weekends off. So I would work radio on the weekends, and the radio station Q95 in Indianapolis, where Bob and Tom started, I had the wonderful, uh, glorious midnight to 6 a.m. shift on Monday mornings. So Sunday night, Monday mornings, when no one is listening to the radio. But I was free, and so I would back then. I just worked all the time, so I took it. Sure, I'll do it. So at 6 o'clock, when Bob and Tom would come in, I would be there, and I just started hanging out, a little bit, and laughing with them, and yada yada yada. And I had moved away to New Mexico for a man, and they called me one day and said, "How's it going out there?" And I was miserable. I said, "Not so well." And they go, "Well, we really would like to add a news person, and we've had this person, she's not working out. We think that the chemistry with you is great. Have you ever done news before?" And I said, "Yes, I did news, back in my radio career at a country station." And so I came back, and the rest is history. I came back and started doing news, and I would only be on twice an hour. I did like 20 and 50 break, and I would do a 2-minute newscast. And then that morphed into when we went syndicated back in 95, I think, or whenever it was. They said, "Okay, we're going to syndicate the show, but we need you in there all the time now." So instead of doing just, so that's when I became, I say, a full time member. I was always a full time member, but you
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like I was
Yeah.
in there the whole time. So
Yeah.
that probably started in 95, 96, that I sat in there the whole show. Then it's been that way off and on ever since.
Yeah. So one question I did want to ask you as we kind of wind down here, because I was raised by women So I don't know if that's the reason why, but I always tend to trust women's opinion on certain things more than men. Maybe it's because women are more open than men. Um, I don't really know, but it seems like listening to you guys as long as I have and being so interested in the comedy, it seems like a profession such as comedy. There's a lot of pain associated with a profession that's supposed to be centered around laughing. I mean, you go look at all the broken relationships that you guys are very open about talking with, you know, how you guys always joke about, I think you said like what, 9 divorces between all of you guys.
Yeah.
And not only that, like so many traveling comedians, they always talk about, so much darkness. Why do you think it is that a profession that is garnered towards making people laugh produces so much pain for the people that are involved in it?
Or is it the pain that was produced why they are trying to make people laugh because it was produced
Mm,
young, which I think is most of the case. I think a lot of the people I have met over the years, both professionally, in this business and in stand up, I think if you really deep down look into their backgrounds, you'll find, parents are divorced or they had, someone in their home had a substance abuse problem or, they were abused possibly. I mean, all of these things that happened to you as a trauma as a child, how do you cover that up and hide that? You try to make people laugh. You become, oh, if people laugh or people like me, I mean, I don't want to get too deep here, but it's still personal to me when I read a comment, oh, you're awful, you suck, you're terrible. Why are you
mhm,
doing what you do? Because I am a people pleaser. I want everyone to like me. And when they don't, it just gets to my soul. And that's because I had a very difficult relationship with my mom. And it wasn't that my mom didn't love me, but I don't think she really liked me. I don't think she ever wanted to be a mom. Does that make sense? And it's not her
yeah,
fault. That's what you did in 1960. You had kids. And so it was one of those things where I think I'm not the only one in that situation, or I'm not the only one that, oh, you know, actors and actresses, why do you think they get out in front of people? They want that attention and that glory because they didn't get it at some point in their life. That's my personal opinion. That's where I pull that from because I did not get a lot of affection as a child. And so I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people do this for a living because it's immediate gratification. Oh, I made that person laugh. They like me. Does that make sense? And so it kind of feeds or heals that little hole in them.
yeah,
Some people never do get healed. Some people continue to go out there and do it, and then they never get past reading those bad comments, or they let that eat them away. I've fortunately through a lot of therapy and stuff, I kind of let that go now because people that are anonymous and can throw out bad words, they've got issues bigger than mine anyway, probably. So,
right,
I'm not going to go there with them. I'm not going to engage them. Other people on our staff tend to kind of engage and then they get in trouble, and you just can't do that. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's my personal opinion. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah. And not to dime anybody else specifically, but somebody whose last name rhymes with Ofke tends to engage with trolls quite a bit, I noticed in the group page. So yeah, that makes
And I love him, but he's a perfect example of someone who takes it all so personally. And don't
yeah,
get me wrong, I do too. I do too. And I feel for him because I know what that's like. But yeah, and I purposely don't read that stuff. His job is to read that stuff, which I feel so
right.
bad for him because he has to read that. And yeah, should he not respond? Yeah, but he's, I think, trying to defend him and us. And I feel, God bless him. That's a tough gig. He and Mark
Yeah.
Allison, because Mark Allison has to read our emails. I just can't even imagine. That would be just, oh,
Yeah.
it's soul eating. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you like to write bad comments or bad emails to people, think twice about it, people, because we are human beings. We do
Right.
read them. We do take it personally. A lot of us can't get past it. And it really, I just did a podcast with a girlfriend of mine who you may or may not know. She was a pretty big star on HGTV, We just had this very same conversation. And it's exactly what happened to her. She just shut down. She goes, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And she's not engaging on social media. She's not working on TV right now. I mean, she just had to take a break. People are mean. I don't know why in our society all of a sudden everyone's gotten so hateful and mean. I would really like to see that turn around. I'd really like if you I used to end my podcast all the time when I did Kristi Lee uninterrupted with just be kind. It's easy to be kind. It's easy to smile at the guy who hasn't had a nice word said to him in 6 years at the grocery store or what,
Yeah.
just be nice to people. And if one person does it, it'll catch on. It does, it really does. Rather than writing hateful, horrible comments about if you don't like it, keep your mouth shut. Don't
Yeah.
listen. There are plenty other options.
Yeah.
And leave poor Jeff Oskey alone.
He's way more kind about it in that group page than I would be with some of the things that these people say.
I'm
And
sure.
it's tough because like I at least have I didn't always, but recently I started to get a little bit more thicker skin in the last couple of years because I just
Hard.
had like life just happened to me so hard so fast that I just don't care what you think of me. You think this podcast sucks? Okay, don't watch it. I either hide you from the channel or I just delete the comment and just move on because I just don't care. Like, if you don't like it, you don't like the way I talk, you don't like the people that I have. Matter of fact, I had somebody who I thought was a friend. He was talking mad shit because I had Sam Miller on, and he was like, "You could do way better than this no-name comedian." Then don't fucking watch it. Like it's that simple. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't even respond to him. I just said, "Fuck it, I'm moving on," because
Well,
I just
that
don't have
shows you
the
your friend doesn't know what he's talking about because Sam Miller's great and he's up and coming and he's going to be
absolutely.
a really big shot someday. I love that boy. In fact, he's going to be on
I
my
do too.
podcast in April. Yeah.
Oh hell yeah, nice, nice. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just I don't have the energy to argue with people anymore. And to your point, and I didn't mean to get on a be positive tangent, but to your point, like
Hmm.
I go out of my way to be extra nice to the cashier. It don't matter what time of year it is. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas, the Sunday of first Sunday in May, whatever. If
Yeah.
I see a cashier is having a bad day, they've got a shitty attitude, I'll go out of my way to be extra polite to them. And by the time I'm done checking out, their attitude has changed a little bit. You can hear the tone in their voice get higher. You can see their eyes aren't as squinted and they're a little bit more relaxed. If everybody did that and realized that customer service interactions aren't there for you to treat people like shit, the world would be a lot better place. So I absolutely agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree. Yeah. Be kind. Be nice. Be
yes,
nice out there. Yes.
absolutely. Well, last question for you. Over your illustrious career, is there any specific moments that pop out of you when you think about your time, whether it be on the newscaster, Bob and Tom, whatever? Is there any specific memories that pop out in your head that you go, these are my favorites?
Favorites or ones that we'll never forget. I mean,
Ones you will
there.
never, either one, either one.
Well, do two of them. I'll do both ways because there's obviously the Twin Towers. That to me was one of those events that, I was on the air for 14, 15, 16 hours straight, Tom and I were. And it's
Mm,
just one of those things where that was such a defining moment in most of our lives. I mean, anyone who was born before, 1999. But I mean, I'm just saying that, or after 1999 or before 1990, you know what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
I keep
yeah,
thinking I have one child born before that happened and one child born after. And so the child born after, well, they were both very young, but it's just for them, it's just kind of something they learned about in school, whereas for us, we
right.
lived it. And you'll
Yeah,
never ever forget that. And I will never ever forget that.
yeah,
Favorite moments for me are the opportunities that I've had to do things I would never get to do, like get in a hot air balloon, get in the Goodyear blimp, ride around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in a race car, drive a race car. God, what are some of the other things? I've flown in private jets to go places. These are things that are like, are you kidding me? And then, of course, anybody who listens to the show, that it's all centered around Peter Frampton. Peter Frampton, I saw in 1976 on my birthday, July 17th, in Balboa Stadium, Balboa Park, San Diego, California. And it was one of those moments where I stood there and went, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this man in my entire life. Now, here we are, 50 years later almost, I have his number in my cell phone. I've seen him every
Right.
time I see him. He's gracious and wonderful with my children, and he's a friend. And if you would have told me that that would have happened to that 16-year-old kid who lived in a trailer park, I would have said, "There's no way in hell." That to me was when I went, "Pinch me, I've done something." Because how many people get that opportunity? And I don't take any of that for granted. I love every second of it and I suck it up and I'm very appreciative. The other big favorite moment for me, when I was pregnant with my second child, Dolly Parton was on the air with us. She came for one break. She loved it so much that she stayed the whole morning. Just so happened that she was trying to help me name my child, which was so cute. And then it just so happened, I don't know, a few weeks, months later, I think I'd already had Sophie maybe. We were doing a stand up show in, I think it was Dayton. It might have been in Ohio, in one of those places where there's a small arena and then there's a big arena in the same like complex. And she was in the big arena. We were in the small arena. Her manager came and got me. Dolly knows you're in the building, wants you to stand on stage with her. I got to go up on stage and stay on stage. She didn't pull me out, but I got to stand there and watch her do two or three songs before I had to go back and do my job. But it was like, oh my gosh, Dolly Parton knows who I am enough that she went and had somebody come get me. That to me was another one of those aha moments where I went, pinch me. And my dad was to this day, to his dying day, I can't believe you met Dolly Parton. Like, I know, Dad, I'm sorry. I wish I could have, you know. But those are just a few of the things that I have been so blessed throughout my life to experience that I never, ever, ever thought that I would. And I never thought, I'll leave you with this. I'll never forget. When I was working in television, I had this television engineer. Well, he was our man, he was our supervisor at night. His name was Barney Hobbs. And he used to play fiddle and guitar, and he played for Grand Ole Opry. And he was just the sweetest old guy. And he used to laugh at me all the time. And he'd go, "Girl, you know this radio ain't a career. It's just a hobby. You keep that in the back of your mind.
Oh.
This is a career. This has got benefits, and it's a union job. Don't forget that." Poor Barney's looking down on me now, going, "I'm sorry I said that, I'm sure." Yeah. So I'm just grateful that my hobby has turned into a lifelong passion that has been more than good to me. And I'm very grateful. I'm very blessed.
Well, for me, being able to sit down and talk with you guys and be on that segment a couple weekends ago, that is a moment where I was like, I cannot believe, even while I was on the phone with you guys, I'm like, I cannot believe I'm on air right now with Bob and Tom. As I was talking to you all throughout this entire episode, I'm sitting here thinking like Kristi Lee is having a conversation with me. And so that this is one of my moments because again, you guys have played such a prominent role in my life that I can't even describe how many hours I've sat down and listened to you guys just over and over and over again. And like, I'll go back and listen to your 2018 best of all the time. Like, if I just need something to listen to in the background, I'll put you guys on. So
Oh, that's
having an
fun.
opportunity to talk to you guys, that is, this is, for lack of better words, this would be my Peter Frampton moment right now, just having this
Oh,
conversation with you.
that's
So
so kind.
thank you
Thank you.
guys. Thank you
Thank
so much for
you.
giving me this opportunity to talk to you, Kristi. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor.
Pleasure's mine. Thanks, Jay.